ये राशि कुकर में से चने निकाल दिए और खाली कुकर गैस पर चढ़ा दिया ये राशि कुकर में से चने निकाल दिए और
Have you ever thought about why does it keep going in my head? And have you thought about how Yashraj just takes up some random dialogue from some random video and somehow makes it into music? I mean, there must be some connection with language and music, right? We're here to tell you exactly that. Welcome to our new series, What's the Neuroscience Behind It? Presented by Stimulus. Alright, so let's get down to what is the neuroscience behind it. We all know Raashi did a horrible thing of taking out all the chana and then putting an empty cooker on the stove. And Kokila Ben was so angry about it, she said it in her rhythmic voice, "Kaun tha? Chada diye." And she kept repeating that. And somehow that became the next gen most popular thing that was shared around, and the number of memes that it gave birth to, oh my god. So Yash does this pretty amazing thing with his musical ability that he identifies dialogues which either have a lot of repetition or has some sort of rhythm, and he adds his own beat, he auto-tunes it or uses other softwares and then makes it into a funny musical piece. Yash wasn't the only one to identify that there's rhythm in music. In fact, in 1995, Diana Deutsch, a researcher who was studying sound illusions at that time, identified that there's rhythm in language. And she called that the speech-to-sound illusion. Professor Deutsch identified this phenomenon in normal day-to-day language. She did not have to add in any beat, any other rhythm. She didn't have to auto-tune it. She found it in normal language. Isn't that interesting? Let's figure out what she really did and what she really found, and how she actually came down to the conclusion of defining it as a speech-to-song illusion. Professor Deutsch was just listening to the recording of her CD, and she just left the player on. When she came back after a while, the player was just repeating a part of the sentence again and again, and she felt like somebody else was in the room. She couldn't recognize her own voice, and she thought that somebody was singing. And that's when she realized that speech has something to do with rhythm, something that makes it sound like music. So what did Professor do next? She went to her lab, identified two groups, and then made them listen to the same audio, one with repetition and one without repetition. There was only a part of the sentence that was repeated, the part being "sometimes behave so strangely," and the repetition made all the difference. When she asked the group which hadn't listened to the repetition, this is what the response was to what they had just heard.
Sometimes behave so strangely.
When she asked the group who listened to the repetition, they responded like this.
Sometimes behave so strangely.
That was so different. The same sentence, but just the repetition made all the difference. One group just said it like a normal sentence, and the other group said it more like a song. It doesn't end there. There was another interesting thing that happened. Well, Professor just asked the group, which had not listened to the repetition, to try and say this particular part, "sometimes behaves so strangely," in a musical way. And guess what happened? When they charted out the pitch of the group which had heard the repetitions and the pitch of the group which hadn't heard the repetitions but tried to sing it, they somehow sang it pretty similar to the group who had heard repetitions. This was the amazing research conducted by Professor, and it was an eye-opener for a lot of us at that time to understand that speech and sound has something to do with each other. There is a lot of literature on repetitions and why we like repetitions in music. And there are a lot of different sort of speech and sound illusions and illusions in music. And you can learn all about them with the link in the description. So check it out below and explore the world of music, illusions, and repetition. More coming up soon. See ya!
The sounds as they appear to you are not only different from those that are really present, but they sometimes behave so strangely as to seem quite impossible. But they sometimes behave so strangely. They sometimes behave so strangely. 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 So strangely. So strangely. So strangely. So strangely.